there is something about the testing of faith in this, that our reaction to the situation we're in right now is a test.
So Martin, this week's gospel is Jesus walking on the water. And I remember, I don't know if this is an apocryphal story, Northwest London Parish in August, it had titles of sermons that it was doing. The first title for the first week was Jesus Walks on Water, hence. But apparently the week after it was Searching for Jesus. I suspect that is, as I say, apocryphal. But what have you to say about this passage, this extraordinary passage? Jesus walks on water and Peter responds.
It just reminded me, there was, is it Bagshot Park, which used to be the centre for the army chaplains, which is now the home of the Earl of Wessex. But there's a pond there that has a little sign saying, "Do not walk on the water." So I'm struck again. I just say something I've said a couple of weeks ago, that there is this context that we have to remember that Matthew is engaging with, when all the Gospels are engaging with. And the context is something about the reality of evil, and it's something about the reality of the life that the early church is facing, so the church that Matthew is writing for, which is the threat of persecution and so forth. And that evil and chaos is represented by the waters being stormy, and the sense that one is travelling through that. And interestingly, what I think the phrase is, they went over the other side. So there's this sense that they're on a journey to solid ground. But whenever we try to make progress in our life of faith or as Christian communities, we pass through this storm-tossed time. And so there's something very kind of immediate for me about this. And what you've got here, I think, is as well as that sense that we're being tossed about, and the disciples were they were battling against a headwind, and the waves were breaking over the side of the boat. But then Jesus, who is the opposite of all of that, and embodies the opposite of all of that, it walks across the water towards them. And then we have that moment where Peter decides that this is an opportunity for him to meet Jesus. And you've got, again in Matthew, you've got this undercurrent, or not so much undercurrent, this thread about the church, and you've got also a thread about Peter, because it's only in the walking on the water in Matthew's gospel that Peter does this. So Peter has significance in this, and for Matthew in particular. So you have this scene where Peter gets out. He receives a share of Jesus's power, which is what he is asked for. And the moment he takes eyes off Jesus, he starts to sink, loses the power. And Jesus, when they get back in the boat, Jesus berates him, not for having no faith, but for having little faith, for the littleness of his faith. And I just get a sense that for us, I'm thinking about the church in these times. There are moments when we think, oh goodness, what's going to happen, and are we going to survive, and anybody going to come back, and will we have any money, and all the rest of it. And it's it's not that we have no faith, but somehow in a crisis, our faith can get diminished, and we think, how are we going to cope? How are we going to manage this? And Jesus is saying, just keep your eyes on me, and you will be able to ride this storm. You will be able to walk through this chaos and evil, and however you experience it. And then, of course, the interesting thing then is that Jesus says, you will be Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. So you've got this whole sense of the foundation of the church being kind of wrought through the experience of moving through chaos and evil, and being able to keep our eyes on Jesus, and to have a deeper and stronger faith, and that it's out of that comes the blessing of the church.
And it is quite extraordinary, isn't it? Because Peter is, as you say, is the if you like, the rock, a founding father, if you like, of the church. But nobody would ever found a bank on a swindler, or an accountancy firm on a fraudster, or an insurance company on somebody with dodgy tax dealings. But here we have,
although I think it's probably happened.
Probably has happened. But here we have, extraordinarily, this happening with Peter. So there is something instructive for us in the story of Peter about everybody's faith and the development thereof. So and looking at it like that, Peter does three things, doesn't he, if you think about it? He sees Jesus, to start with, in the boat, doesn't he? Now, he could have seen a ghost, or imagined it was a ghost, but he saw Jesus.
You get that thread in the story, don't you?
You do, is it a ghost? But he at least, give him the credit that he saw that it was Jesus. We talk about the Victorian age as sexually repressed. I would argue that
where are you going with this?
I would argue that our age is spiritually repressed,
right,
in that we, unlike Peter, are not so ready to see Jesus. But he sees Jesus to his credit. Secondly, he does step out, as you say. He's got his eyes on Jesus, and he overcomes his fear. And as you say, the reason he overcomes his fear is because he's got his eyes on Jesus. But the fear comes back as he looks away from Jesus. Now, this is a development for Peter, because the last time there was a storm, he and the other disciples scurried to Jesus in the boat and said, "Wake up, don't you care that we're perishing?" So there has been an advance here. So there is some development. And then, of course, the third thing, after seeing and stepping out, is that he sinks. And part of me is kind of relieved that he sinks in one way, because there is not a standard here that's so gold that I know I could be nowhere near it. But as you say, Jesus says, "Oh, you little faith," and I wonder what the tone is that Jesus uses for that. And I'm wondering if the tone is not kind of, well, it's not dismissive, is it? Clearly it's not dismissive, but there's something about, come on. And I put this next to the remark that Jesus makes later in Luke's gospel to Peter, which is, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat, but I have prayed for you, and when you turn again, strengthen your brothers and sisters. And what is it that we can actually, what is actually the rock for Peter in the end? It is the fact of Jesus' prayer for him, and for the fact that Peter is for him in and throughout this, come what may, through crucifixion and beyond. And finally, that's what really enables him to be no longer oligopistor. But we are all at different stages in terms of Peter's kind of, development as the follower of Jesus.
And without just picking up on the Satan sifting, without somehow belittling the suffering involved, there is something about the testing of faith in this, that our reaction to the situation we're in right now, for instance, is a test. That and are we going to respond in faithfulness, or are we going to respond in kind of panic and fear, and a sense that it's entirely up to us and we've got to sort it out?
Echoing those extraordinary words of James 1, where James says something about, when you encounter afflictions and difficulties, count it as all joy, because these afflictions make for endurance, endurance makes for patience, makes for hope, and the fruits of this can be so important to us in terms of our drawing close to our Lord.
Thank you.
Thank you.